So, Rebecca, tell me about hormone replacement.
So I have been on estrogen and progesterone low doses for the last 4 months. We talked about how I had really high blood pressure, like 165, 175.
We talked about it off the mic.
Okay. So I'll just tell everybody I had really high blood pressure to the point where like the doctor would try and do everything in the office to get my blood pressure reading to go down.
Well, what would the doctor do?
Like put your feet on the floor, sent me through relaxation. They would think they were doing great. They'd put the cuff back on. They'd take my number and he would go, ugh! And I would say, is it higher than when we started? And he was like, yes! He was like so disappointed in himself. I'm like, it's not you, it's me. So high blood pressure is a postmenopausal symptom that doesn't get talked about. Women who are postmenopausal, I think, are like 5 times more likely to die of a heart attack than breast cancer. So for those of you who've experienced, perimenopause can last a very long time. For Ashkenazi Jewish women, it can last up to 15 years, and I think mine did. Night sweats, hot flashes, mood swings, weight gain. And then I've learned that menopause is actually just a single day that was when you've had a year since your last period. That day is called menopause. So it actually has no like hormonal significance or anything. You get all of these people who are waiting for that day so that they can say that they're menopausal. But it actually, if you look at people's bodily experience, perimenopause is huge and should be taken very, very seriously. I probably should have gone on hormone replacement therapy long ago. It has a bad reputation, but all of those studies that it causes cancer have been seen as that study wasn't valid. I'm on a low dose and I can be on this dose for 10 years. So I am now postmenopausal, which means that it's been over a year since my last period. But again, like that's such a weird term because it doesn't, if you look at like hormonally or my body's experience, I wish there was a better nomenclature for this whole experience. So due to the high blood pressure and some other, I was getting in that stage where I was like on a lot of different medications. And when I looked up all the symptoms, they were all symptoms of postmenopause. And it was like, what is the chance that I can do hormone replacement therapy and kind of just go down to 2 pills a day instead of like 5. So I've been doing it for the last 4 months. It's been great. I still get night sweats occasionally.
Well, it takes a while for the hormones, from my understanding, it begins a cascade of biological effects that have a lot of downstream effects in the body, from my understanding. And it could take up to a year to have your equilibrium established. So even after 4 months, sometimes it's hard to know, even though there can be immediate relief, from my understanding.
Well, if I can think back that my hormones have been whacked for 15 years.
Yeah. So to help people understand why with menopause you would go on hormone replacement, can you explain that?
So I am trying to even out my body's experience. I mean, maybe you can explain this better. I can't quite explain it. So because of the lack of progesterone and estrogen, and then I have to take both. I can't just take one. The way my body reacted is my blood pressure went way up. Not everyone would have that symptom, but that is the way that my body was reacting to the lack of estrogen and progesterone in my body.
The lowered estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah. Right. Not complete lack.
Right.
And so, why does my body react that way and someone else's body reacts completely different?
Yeah. What other symptoms have been relieved other than your
So the hot flashes are way down.
Tell us about hot flashes.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Have you ever been somewhere and you just get extremely hot?
Well, I feel like men have this just throughout our lives. That's why we're often opening the windows and like you're all bundled up right now in my office.
Right. You're in a t-shirt.
And I'm a t-shirt, and I actually open the windows because I am frequently, but it's not like a hot flash and it's not like extremely uncomfortable. It's just like, oh, I'm so hot. I need to take, I'm guessing
just-
hot flashes are like 10 times worse.
Just imagine out of nowhere, your body heats up to a very high temperature. You're sweaty, you're uncomfortable. Oh, we didn't even talk about brain fog. It is, people have described it like, I was put in the microwave for a minute and I came out very hot.
Sounds very uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
And it happens at any time?
Right. And it's just kind of physically overwhelming, and you are somewhere.
How long does it last?
Oh, God. 10 minutes, an hour, depending on how high stress the situation is. So I was at my friend's birthday party. There were probably 10 postmenopausal women there, and hot flashes got the most attention in our discussion of people talking about like they're in a professional situation and all of a sudden they're sweating and they like have to strip down. And so this happens to me when I present. Like the minute I start talking in a live presentation, my body temperature goes up an insane amount and I just have to like strip down. So it is a, God, I wish I knew the science of it. Do you know the science of it?
I don't. I'm sure some of the people in our audience understand the physiology, but I don't.
But it is, your body is dealing with hormones surging.
And hormones have to do with, I'm guessing it has something to do with the regulation of body temperature through calorie burning.
Oh.
And there's something that is off kilter equilibrium-wise that with less estrogen and progesterone, the body doesn't realize it doesn't need to kick into high gear for calories. But, just sudden burning of all those waiting in the wings calories, because that's what we do all day is we burn those things to give us heat and energy. And you have this huge surge in all that burning, which causes, I'm guessing, I don't know, that's just my guess.
So, yeah, there was a while there where every kind of extra pocket I had in a purse or something had a fan in it. I had so many fans that I realized I had become that woman that could just whip out a fan at any minute. I saw this actually in a presentation I was giving in person. This woman had this electric fan and she just kept turning it on and like having it on her. Yeah.
Does it also necessitate having lots of flouncy layers that you can rip off?
So I was thinking when it was the night sweats were at its worst, I became a connoisseur of wicking pajamas. There are pajamas that say they're wicking that they are not.
Wicking.
But I used to just wake up like about 10 years ago, I would just wake up like drenched in sweat.
Does this mean you can like pee the bed and it would just wick it away as well? Is that
no?
Does it have
I think
a double
it's really
purpose?
for sweat.
Oh, okay.
You need the special undergarments.
Can't you just not wear pajamas?
It was like, I don't even know. I guess I wanted pajamas, but they needed to be wicking. But then they start to, like exercise clothes, and they start to smell gross. So you go through like there was like a heavy connoisseurship of wicking pajamas.
Yeah.
Now I actually sleep in a Psychology in Seattle t-shirt that you gave me. But maybe you should make special wicking ones for those of us who are
That's great.
need to cool down.
That's great. Do you want an extra large? Because sometimes you...
No, I don't know if you want too much fabric, but it's crazy when you wake up. For those people who've had night sweats, it's crazy. Like you just wake up and you're just drenched. And
so you have
like,
less of those now?
Yeah. And it's like, how did my body just do that? There are some stressful periods that I'm in where I'll have more night sweats than I do now. But
so with these extra or returning to the older levels of hormones, are you starting to think like a 35-year-old again?
Ooh. I just noticed I am much more, the brain fog is chilled out. I can kind of do several tasks at once or remember what my tasks are. I don't know if you have that experience where you're like in the kitchen and you have no idea.
Brain fog is the worst. So I'm glad. So do you still get brain fog occasionally?
Yeah, there are periods where I just have to like sit and like take a minute to figure out what I need to do next.
Yeah.
Because I can't quite put it together. And right now I'm in the most stressful crunch. So I am 2/3 of the way through the live classes and the sex therapy certification.
Yeah. You're a student.
I'm a student.
Sex therapy certification program.
Yeah. And it is Zoom weekends. It's Fridays and Saturdays, 8 hours of class. So I'm doing my full caseload in 4 days, 2 full days of classes. And it is like content. Like the pace is, I would say, brutal.
Mm-hmm. And then during the week, you're supposed to do homework, I'm assuming.
There actually isn't very much homework.
Oh, okay.
There is 90 hours post this of modules that I'll have to do self-paced. And there's a ton of reading. And
there's also supervised.
If I want to go for certification, yes, I need to do 50 hours of certification with an ASECT
certified supervisor. And you might not want official certification?
I do want it. I will be honest, I'm having trouble finding a supervisor.
I sent you some.
I know. They haven't written back or they're full.
Oh.
I don't know.
They didn't get back to you at all? I'll bug them. Bug Fiona. But anyway, question related to sex. Let's take a break first, though.
Oh, okay.
So tell us about the Kinsey scale.
So the Kinsey scale is one of the first American scales to address heterosexuality and the possibility and normalness of homosexuality.
And bisexuality.
And bisexuality, right. It's a scale that goes from 0 to 6.
I thought it was 7.
I think it's 6 because 0 counts as 1.
Oh, okay.
So 0 is exclusively heterosexual. And then the thing I'm obsessed with is that 1, and the language is so interesting. 1 is heterosexual, incidentally homosexual, which has caused a great discussion between me and many people. What does incidentally homosexual mean?
Yeah.
So one friend said to me, incidentally homosexual means that you're on a submarine for 6 months with all people, all male gender. And suddenly you find yourself incidentally receiving a homosexual experience.
Receiving a homosexual experience.
But the language, so when I was doing HIV/AIDS work, the language was men who have sex with men but don't self-identify. Do you remember that term?
Mm-hmm. It's still around, I think.
Okay. So those men, like, would those men count as incidentally homosexual? Like, I once again was in the porn bookstore in the back room receiving a blowjob. Is that incidentally homosexual?
Yeah. And it's weird when you pose these questions to the public, people will really binary this. They'll be like, come on, you're gay, that kind of stuff. Instead of, well, I don't know. How do you feel about it? You know, what turns you on? But it gets weird because with the stigma and the oppression and the hatred and the terror of being who you really are, it can mess things up, right? Yeah.
Well, and also having conversations with my friends now, they're like, I can't even believe when the scale even exists. And I was thinking, like, at the time, it was revolutionary that there was even considered a spectrum.
Your friends can't believe what?
That this exists. They can't imagine a world where you couldn't openly identify.
You're going to burp.
I just burped. As bisexual or gay.
Yeah.
But at the time when this scale came out, it was like...
Yeah, so I think it was the 1950s.
It blew the roof off of things that you could even...
It blew the roof off for decades, still does to some extent. Because what they found, Kinsey researchers, was that...
And there's a movie, if you haven't seen it.
With, I think, Laura Linney in it?
She's great.
Yeah. And...
Playing the wife.
They were looking at actually not labels, but what do people do and what are people turned on by, and what they were, I think, shocked themselves to find was that there wasn't this bifurcation of humans where you have heterosexuals and homosexuals, that almost everybody is somewhere in the middle somewhere. They might be a 5 or a 1 or a right in the middle of a 3 or a 4. Some people, though, seemingly are 0s, and some people are seemingly 6s. But
for years, there was a great gay a cappella group called the Kinsey Six. I don't know if they're still out there.
That's a great name. So it was really shocking to people because what it was a mirror back to
Right, it
society.
ripped the lid off to say, like, hey, here's what you may need to identify as straight to keep your job or whatever, but what are you actually doing?
Yeah. What are you fantasizing about? What sort of porn are you looking at? What sort of dreams do you have? And that's a fuller representation of who you
Desire.
actually are and what you're oriented towards and
Yeah.
what turns you on and what you like to do, you know?
Yeah, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on what does incidentally homosexual mean to you?
Anonymous annual patron, she says, I am a biological female and I identify as a lesbian. Please tell me what this could mean. Sometimes during sex or masturbation, I imagine having a penis. Rebecca, what does that mean?
That's totally valid, and you're not alone. And you could go purchase a penis and see what it's like to really have one. I mean, of course, we are turned on by all kinds of things. And it doesn't mean you actually want to have a penis. It just means that whatever that represents to you is arousing. Lots and lots of women fantasize about having a penis because, for all kinds of reasons. But it represents power. It represents being able to penetrate with your pelvis. It represents, this idea of like, some women, would just love to be able to like ejaculate everywhere, which some women can. So there's a lot of things that penises can be. I would say it's perfectly normal. Please enjoy your fantasy.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe a part of this question is, does this mean I'm trans? That's not in there.
Not necessarily, no. There's a wide spectrum of what it means to be trans. It doesn't just mean having a penis. It means, do you want to live your life as a man? Mm-hmm. And, having a penis is something that for a lot of folks in my life, they take on and they take off.
You can have them when you want them and you can
take
get
it
rid
off.
Of them. Yeah. And throw them in the drawer.
Right. Pack it in a suitcase. Be on your way.
Yeah. You can chastise it all you want.
You could pick a different size.
Yeah.
Meet the needs of a different lover or yourself that day.
Yeah. Throw it away.
Who do you want to be? Put it in the dishwasher?
Trade it in for a new one. Yeah.
Make sure it's clean.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing, right? You need to wash it all the time.
Well, not all, just when after you use it. You don't need to watch it all the time.
Because they have, or disinfect it at the very least, because they have like little pores that can grow bacteria, right?
It's more the folds or there's bumps and ridges.
Yeah. Veiny.
Yeah. But I think, many, and I've heard that many girls talk about like, I wish I had a penis. Like, for some people it represents power. For some people, it represents being like truly able to, quote, penetrate a partner in a way that society has told them is the correct way to penetrate a partner.
Or a way to pleasure your partner.
Yeah.
In a way that you can't without one,
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I would say, I don't know, go find some penises and see which one works for you.
Speaking of penises.
Oh, good.
Love is Blind, Jimmy.
Yes.
You haven't told us your thoughts about the latter half of Love is Blind.
Oh, God.
Jimmy and Chelsea breaking up. What'd you think?
Thank God. She really, really needs help in order to be in a relationship. He is clearlier. I just made up a new word. He is in a healthier place with himself and with his ability around friendships and connections. And she is in a very rigid place about wanting a type of partner that isn't healthy for her or the partner.
You watched my series on borderline abuse, did you not?
Yeah. So, and I was told I didn't really call her out for being abusive when I did the last podcast on this subject. And I just want to say, if this gets advertised as a Love is Blind podcast, the numbers will be much higher. People don't know who I am. So my name is Rebecca. I'm a I specialize in trauma therapy. I've been working in trauma therapy for 25 years. I've sat with more abuse survivors than your average person. So if it were really in my office, I could really see it. And I was thinking, why didn't I notice that Chelsea was as abusive as she was? And I think I was in shock that a reality TV show would not weed out someone that was that.
Oh, well, that's not something that the reality TV shows will screen.
I was
especially if it's a woman, honestly.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They like the drama.
Yeah. They could have done that, but they didn't because imagine season 6 without Chelsea and Jimmy. They're the highlight of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was interesting, especially that scene at the amusement park where he is trying to have a really good time and you can see she's just so brittle and she's like falling apart. You
can sense that.
Yeah. That was my impression.
Yeah. Yeah. For people who tune into the podcast and don't know you very well and jump down your throat because they don't know you very well, they think, who is this person talking in ways that I don't agree with? Some of the comments on YouTube were critical of you, and I didn't really understand why. The main criticism was that you liked Laura.
I know, which I thought was so funny.
Well, what do you think?
I mean, so her upfrontness really tweaked people in a way that I was like, that's like all the women I know are that upfront. So that idea that like that is not acceptable was super interesting to me. Like what are the women around you like? Or what is acceptable for a woman to be if she can't be that brutally honest?
I think it's a number of things because I've been on a roller coaster myself with Laura and with and with the audience because I know she got people liked her and then they didn't like her. Well, I'll tell you I think it's worth kind of exploring because I think it does involve a lot of different factors, including internalized misogyny. Because, it seems like a lot of the people criticizing you for liking Laura were women themselves.
Yeah. And somebody told me that I don't like traditional women, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah. Well, why would that be funny?
Because what is a traditional woman to you?
Yeah.
I don't like your internalized traditional woman.
Yeah.
Like to say, so I'm watching, oh my God, I'm finally watching Killing Eve.
Uh-huh.
And there's so many female strong characters in that show that are not, that you don't see on TV very much, but are so enjoyable. And I think it's why the show is such a hit. It's like women who have sex with their enemies, women who kill, women who are 10 times smarter than anyone else in the room. And I was like, oh, this is why everyone loves the show, is that the women are so interesting.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, you don't mistreat or judge or are prejudiced towards what would be considered traditional women leading a traditional female role of a life. I've never seen that. But in terms of my journey with Laura, when I first started watching the show, I didn't really think much of Laura because there wasn't a lot of focus on her. And the first time I really noticed her was when Jessica was in that situation, the love triangle with Jimmy and with Chelsea. And both Jessica and Chelsea had these long dates with Jimmy. And Chelsea comes back into the lounge and there's like a Jessica clique and then a smaller Chelsea clique, and Laura is over there next to Chelsea, and Chelsea is whispering because she doesn't want to say this in front of Jessica, and Chelsea is and people are badgering Chelsea. It's like, what did he say? What did he say? What did he say? And Chelsea's like, well, he said that he loved me, and Laura immediately pops up, runs over to Jessica, and says, "You got to go. You got to leave now. You got to leave." You remember that whole scene? And I did not like that approach because Jessica kept saying, well, what do you know? What happened? And Laura's like, no, you just got to go. Just trust me, pack your shit and leave. And Jessica's like, what happened? What's prompting this? Laura's saying this, Jessica, you just got to go. You just got to leave. What do you think of that?
I mean, there are protectors. This would be a really interesting, like, what kind of character strategy is that? And Laura is a protector. She's a protector of herself. She takes zero bullshit. You see that as her.
But if you were Jessica, would you like someone doing that to you? I wouldn't. I would not want someone to just treat me like I'm a child. Just tell me what the fuck you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that part is interesting, but I think the act of protection for me is really interesting.
But it's self-centered protection. It's
Why
not
is that?
because she's not empathizing with Jessica.
She's just saying, here's what you need to do.
I've told you all you need to know. Leave.
Yeah.
It's
so,
not
I mean,
like,
that says to me she comes from an authoritative household.
maybe, yeah.
Or something in her.
Either way, it's fucking annoying. I don't care where it comes from. It was really annoying to me. That was the first time that I noticed her.
See, that moment I barely noticed, but I think that's because I don't really watch
Well, it was
the
earlier.
show.
It was earlier in the season, and we hadn't really identified Laura as a character yet.
Right. She becomes the villain. I mean, I thought what was so interesting is that you polled listeners early on and people liked Laura, and then you polled them later and they didn't like Laura.
She was. So
like, that's some interesting character development right there.
Yeah, so just to lay out the percentage, 21% of listeners liked Laura. She was the 5th most hated person. The only more hated people were Trevor, Sarah, Matthew, and Jeremy, which is saying something, you know. But, 21% of people were like you at the end, saying that they liked Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is like, and I said this the last time we talked, that, Laura is like all the women I grew up with. Like, every woman I grew up with is that opinionated, that sure of herself.
Right. So let me tell you the rest of my journey. That I watched more of her, and when her and Jeremy were hitting it off in the pods, it humanized her. During the getaways, we're seeing her and Jeremy, and the whole bean dip thing was pretty awful, I thought. And then the apology on the dock between, Jeremy's apologizing the next day to Laura, and I thought Laura was really cool about it. She didn't rake him over the coals. She accepted his apology. She seemed flexible. She seemed like she actually cared and loved him and actually wanted to make things work. There was a tenderness there, a vulnerability there. Then I talked with my contact who worked behind the scenes.
I'm obsessed with your contact.
And I
want to do a character study of your contact.
She was telling me about her experiences with all the cast, including Laura, and had fleshed out Laura, in addition to other cast members, a lot more, which made me like Laura more because there were things that were being edited out around Laura and Jeremy, because what my contact said was that...
I mean, let me just say this. In the apocalypse, you want Laura. Laura's going to watch out for you. Laura's got your back.
Yeah.
Laura, yeah.
And in terms of villainhood, is Laura that bad? You know what I mean? And what's the... So then I talk with my wife, who was one of those people who did not like Laura. And it's all interesting for all of us, I think. It's an interesting character study for all of us of who we identify with and who do we hate and who do we kind of ignore. And Stacy was very, very triggered by season 1. So this is 4 years ago with Amber. If people remember Amber and Barnett actually are still married. And the way that Amber was, particularly at the after the altar party, Stacy to this day, whenever Amber is brought up, I mean, she just goes, "Oh, that Amber," and she's not alone. There's a number of people who are very, very triggered.
And I got to check out Amber. I'll learn more.
She's nothing like Laura. She's a very different sort of character, but also interesting that for me, because we would talk, Stacy and I, about the show, and I would be reviewing things and she'd be reviewing things. And I found that we, by mid-season, had a difference in it. Not like arguing, but she really did not like she really didn't like Laura. And I was more like, well, yeah, there's some concerns, but I think there's some redeeming qualities. And maybe I'm influenced by my contact behind the scenes. I don't know. And then at the beach scene, the big party, she cries because, the breakup is becoming kind of...
She's being so awful.
Is being very realized by her and kind of shoved in her face, Sarah.
And then the producers bring in Sarah, which is when I had to turn it off, and then I had reflux all night long because it was like such a torturous moment.
And you see the human behind it, right?
Yeah.
And then I sent out the survey, and everyone hates Laura. And then I talked to you, and Laura's your favorite. Mm-hmm. And so I've been on this total roller coaster around this. But the listeners, what would you say to the listeners that are upset at you for?
Well, I think what's funny is people have to remember that it's hard as this is to imagine. This is my first time watching the show.
Yeah.
So I think what's been built up for what is a bad character, what is a good character in the show.
But I think that's good that you don't know that.
I don't know.
I try to avoid absorbing that consensus reactivity because I think sometimes it's justified, but I think sometimes it's based on the crowd mob identification of a target of our bullying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm completely out of it. I'm not watching any of the social media.
And I don't want you to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? If we're going to do this, I think you should be fresh and yourself.
Yeah. Which makes it fun for me in a way to know that everybody's having these really strong reactions, and then I'm having this completely different reaction.
But a lot of people like Laura, 21%.
Which I should say also isn't uncommon for me. That everybody's over here, and I'm like, whoa, I'm over here. I'm used to being kind of outside and having a really different perspective.
Oh, in conclusion about
and we got to
Laura,
hit Clay's parents. I'm obsessed.
I think that the reason why people didn't like Laura was similar to the reason why people don't like Amber from season 1, is that her criticism of Jeremy in the beginning, the T-shirt, the Hawaiian shirts, that kind of stuff, and the kind of I don't know how to say, the lack of taking responsibility about the bean dip thing, because if you did you watch me rewatch that scene?
No, I should rewatch it.
Because I watched it and thought one thing, then I started hearing people saying, well, she was just joking. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe she was. And then at the end I rewatched the bean dip scene, and it was worse the second time I watched it.
It's so bad.
She is not joking.
No.
And Brittany, Brittany and Kenneth, Brittany is softly saying, well, Laura, you did tell him to do that. You did tell him to smack AD's breasts. Brittany is quietly trying to help Laura to admit what Brittany had observed, And Laura's just like, I don't know what everyone's they make a big deal of this. Everyone, it had not only that kind of attitude, but it also kind of had a Trumpian attitude of oh, I'm just being canceled because everyone's too sensitive and this is too political correctness, It didn't have that overtly. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why when you piled up those behaviors, I think for a lot of people, and really only women that I've talked to and over email and comments, and my wife are just Laura, right. But not for me. I didn't in the end have that kind of attitude. I think influenced by you and by my contact.
Yeah. Is Laura perfect? No. If something was going wrong, would I want a friend like Laura? Yes.
Let's take a break and then let's talk about AD and Clay.
Okay, wait.
So first off, Rebecca.
Hold on, I'm still stretching.
You're still stretching.
So part of this hours and hours and hours on Zoom is that I'm having tension headaches for the first time in my life.
Can you stand while you are on class?
Oh my God. I'm lying down. I'm making art. I'm standing. I'm eating. Okay. I eat like a fiend the way I'm coping. I don't weigh myself, but I'd be fascinated to see. I just eat all the way through class because I don't drink coffee. So there's no other way to stay awake. Man, I have tried absolutely everything. But this is why I went back to in-person therapy way before everybody else did in the pandemic. People were like, you're going to die from COVID. And I'm like, I'm going to die sitting on Zoom. Like, this medium is the worst.
It is.
For me.
For me too. I mean, apparently for other people it's fine. Bob, for example, he's totally Zoom and he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of eye stuff. So I have astigmatism, which means that the camera staring at the screen is extra hard for me.
Yeah.
I have all of my post-autouterine rupture issues, which means sitting erect is horrible for me because my pelvis is all messed up. So I'm like a disaster. And I guess there's this queer thing where like you can't sit normally in chairs, and I have that problem. So
8 hours is brutal.
Yeah. So I'm lounging. So I've just like the poor people that have to watch me all day. Like I just like set up this encampment on the couch that's like food and collage materials and my dog and pillows. And I just take up a lot of space, and I've given up sitting in chairs. I tried sitting in chairs one weekend and was like, I can't do it. So
yeah. So AD and Clay's wedding.
Yes.
She says I do. He says I don't.
Oh God.
What do you think?
It was brutal. I mean,
did you think that was going to happen?
He was so on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he understands his impact on people. I think the family history that gets disclosed for him is the most intense. I don't know if everyone else had a story that intense and they didn't focus on it. I just want to say that I mispronounced. I said his parents were from Ghana last time, and they are from Guyana. So I want to correct myself on that. The fact of his father's affairs, the fact that he was the cover, the beard, to use a gay term, for his father's trips to be on affairs was clearly so traumatizing for him about what is love and what is commitment and when are you ready. The way that the mother confronts the father about what she's learned by them being on the show, I guess, stuff comes to light that she didn't know. Mm-hmm. And she says to the dad, you need to take responsibility that your son is not ready for marriage because of the things that you did. I was like, oh my God. Like that is some serious.
And she said it in this very...
She's calm.
Well, but it had an intensity too.
Oh yeah.
It was...
Fire.
I have chills thinking about it because it was pointed and strong and appropriate and not awkward. Mm-hmm. And caring at the same time, but pointed at the same time. And the dad took it.
Yeah.
And didn't bullshit I thought he's going to bullshit his way out of this, right? He's going to be like, well, it was different, or will you, da-da-da. He took it in exactly the way you would hope that he would take it given his problem, because I'm sure he's not out of the woods yet, you know what I mean? And it looked like a gut punch, but he accepted it and didn't try to sneak out of it. And I think it might have helped him, might have helped the whole family, and most importantly, might have helped Clay, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that portrayal of so people ask me all the time, like, what does intergenerational trauma look like? What does it look like to hold the burden of your grandparents and your parents? And that storyline, and I actually had a client say to me, Clay's storyline was the most touching to me. That's the person that had the most personal growth in this story. Like,
see, now your work with your clients is enhanced.
My clients are listening and watching, and now we're like deep in it. Because it's like, so I can see why you pick this as the fruit from which you
pick from the tree.
Yeah. Like, it is so full, and it's so rare that you get to watch someone fall apart so intensely.
Yeah.
So Clay is wrestling all season.
Was he sincere?
What's that?
Was he sincere?
I think so. And AD is so ready to get married. I mean, her falling apart at the ceremony of saying, I have given men so much attention, so much time. why can't they ever show up for me?
Yeah.
Was also just heartbreaking, right?
Yeah. She personalizes it. Right. There must be something wrong with me.
Right. But you hear this from women all the time. Like, I do so much emotional labor. When do I get taken care of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was surprised that he said no.
Yeah. I mean, I would be too. If you get that, why get that far? Why say no then?
Yeah. Well, so this is a criticism that I've had and a frustration I've had with this show, that clearly behind the scenes, the producers
There's so much pressure.
They're pressuring them.
Yeah.
But I think in later seasons, there's less pressure and more flexibility, clearly, because season 1, Jimmy and Chelsea would have absolutely gone all the way to the altar. But because of precedent and maybe the producers learning that they don't have to make sure, because I think the whole premise in the beginning was,
is to get to the altar.
We have to get them to that altar.
Speaks to our culture.
Right. But over time, I think they've been forced to accommodate couples that don't want to do that.
And those stories are just as poignant and interesting to me as a consumer. Yeah.
And they've learned as producers that the show is just as successful if people don't go to the altar, So there's that. But I think that there's also a bit of mild brainwashing that happens to some of the cast from the producers. It's subtle that they'll say, where are you right now with your, they'll pull Clay aside, and this is all speculation. And Clay would say like, well, I don't know, I really care about AD, and I could see myself being married to her, but I just don't know if I'm really ready. And a friend would say, well, then clearly...
Right, don't do it.
But a producer might say...
Why not?
Well, maybe
As they say in Croatia, why not?
Maybe maybe give it a couple more days and see,
Well, and also it's like Stockholm syndrome at that point, right? Like I'm sure they make the wedding look really enticing.
Yeah.
Of like, all your friends will be there and it'll be this very special day.
And frankly, they pay them if they get to the altar. They pay you get a bonus if you make it to the altar. Yeah. It's not much. I think it's like $1,000 or $2,000 or something. But, it's something. And in
our culture, getting to the altar, I mean, this whole show is based on to the fact that like getting married is seen as this pinnacle of humanness. I mean, they say it all the way through the show. This is the most important decision of your life. This is the most important day of your life. I wouldn't put that kind of pressure on anyone. Can I tell a little story here?
Please, but let me just wrap up this. It just seems very, very strange that someone would say no at the altar, not having known that they might say no at the altar the previous day or the previous week.
Let me just say, this guy is a athlete. This guy was trained to perform from an early age, show up even if you don't feel it, and do the thing. And I mean, I would say with that psychology, I would be really interested if he just saw it as like, one more game, I'll show up, I'll do the thing, I know how to do the thing, and then like gets there and realizes this isn't a game.
I don't blame Clay so much. I just think that it's a question of the whole process. If he wasn't on a reality TV show and for some reason this was a question, I'm guessing he would have pulled the plug without having to walk up to the altar. You know what I mean? But anyway, so you were going to talk about some.
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about ceremony. So I see a lot of Jewish clients, and the ceremony that I process the most with my Jewish parent clients is their kid's bar mitzvah, which is a wedding for a 12-year-old to no one, to God, to the covenant of Judaism. And it's incredibly stressful, and, the kid has to do it, and the kid can back out at any time, but there's all this pressure, and there's this party, and the relatives are coming, and there's the before dinner and the after event. And I've watched many, many parents, it is, I too, in this process, you came to my kid's bar mitzvah, like, you're just on this crazy roller coaster and you can't stop it.
Well, and an element that I hadn't known before witnessing E's process is that for a year, you're preparing for this performance in which you read from the Torah in Hebrew and sing it. You have to
chant it.
Yeah, you have to. It's essentially what, like a 15-hour song that you have to sing excerpts from. You know what I mean? And
in a special cadence that's just for that section.
Yeah, and you're 14 at the time. 12. So it's perhaps the most nerve-wracking thing, and there's a lot of emotional processes you go through that require you to grow the fuck up, right? You're alone on that stage. Mommy isn't there to hold your hand. You've got to do it. And the entire community is there waiting to hug you and hold you literally above their heads,
right,
saying, you are now a man, you know, you're an adult, right? And that process, that emotional process, is a huge leap forward in maturity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so I have parents like freaking out, losing their minds. And when I went through it as a parent, because my family wasn't together enough, I didn't have a bar mitzvah. So when I'm saying...
You never did? Mm-mm. Oh.
So when I'm saying bar mitzvah, it is the genderless, so bar and bat, I mean male and female. By saying bar mitzvah, I'm taking out the gender. I couldn't learn Hebrew. My family was in chaos at that time. I didn't have one.
Does that bum you out?
It does. But it was probably for the best because...
Have you seen the TV show with Will Ferrell, The Shrink Next Door?
No.
Because as an adult, he goes through a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And it's a real story. You know, it's based on true events.
Yeah. You can do it as an adult, but I'm choosing not to.
Okay.
And people want me to.
Could you do your own version?
Well, this is a whole nother episode of why. So the year is 2016, 2017, and it is the year Trump gets elected.
16.
And I am...
Well, it must have been that
16,
summer, so
17.
So the summer of 17.
Yeah, but so in that year leading up to the ceremony that you saw, Eli had to go to 6 other bar mitzvahs to kind of, or Saturday services. So the Saturday service, the Shabbat service, is the most sacred ceremony in Judaism. And I have barely been to any in my lifetime, but in this horrible year where I am soul searching, I go to 6. And it hits me like at 5, oh my God, what we are doing here is training a 12-year-old to run the most important religious ceremony in the community in case shit goes down, and it always does. And that's what I say now to parents when they're like, the family and the thing and will enough locks come, and I'll just break it down. Like, do you remember what the purpose of this ceremony is?
Meaning that when families are trivializing it or
so stressed out,
getting annoyed by
the modern details of it.
Instead, it's sort of like with a wedding, like, oh, the flowers aren't right and my dress isn't perfect, and the minister might say, look, what you're doing right now is way beyond those details. You are committing yourself to each other in front of your community, maybe under God, that you love each other and you're dedicated to each other. Like, that's the core, and everything else is just silliness. That's what you're doing. Yeah.
And it's amazing to watch people drop out of the chaos of it into the this ceremony preserves our culture. And so when my mom passed away, it was one of the most special experiences of my life that my kid knew all the prayers. And when I couldn't speak, my kid could stand and say all the prayers and stand next to me and do all the things. They'd learned all the things that tie my culture together over 7,000 years, over being on the run for 3,000 years. It was really, really profound. And so I think, when you're on the altar and you're looking at that person, maybe in that moment Clay was, and he says, I still want to know you and love you and get to know you better, but I'm not ready for a step that's so profound. And AD says back, but I'm ready. And I don't want to be with you unless you're ready right now, right? So you get people that are in such different states of what the ceremony meant to them. To AD, she's ready. And to Clay, he's like, maybe I'll feel it.
And another layer of this, I think, and I might have talked about this in a video, is that for Clay, this whole process you could consider to be its own ceremony or rite of passage. The pods, the getaway, the altar, that there was the Clay before, and now there's the Clay after. I think that it's quite possible that he was transformed. And he talked about that during the show, that it seemed like he was forcing himself to grow up. He wanted to go on the show knowing that he might not be ready, but that he needed to push himself to another level or something. He wanted to shed something, and you could see the shedding, right? Because the moments in the pods where he's just like, I'm into lips and butts, and I don't know, how hot are you, or whatever.
Right, he says that to AD.
Yeah. And
she's like, what?
Yeah. And then afterwards, like, if you don't go to the gym, I'm just going to, I'm going to tell, if you're fat, I'm going to tell you to go to the gym. And the wrestling that I think he was doing with himself. And then you fast forward to after the altar, while they're still in their wedding garb and he's being kind to her, that it's a new part of him is becoming more dominant, I think, through that process. I think that's one way of looking at it. Question, Jeremy, did you watch my videos detailing the allegations against Jeremy? Just a quick synopsis. A past partner from like 9 years ago came forward and made a series of TikToks detailing her relationship with him over a span of like a year that involved some very quintessential abusive behavior, controlling, like she was out with her friends and he shows up, he like figures out where she's at and shows up at the bar, the restaurant, and is livid and is just like, when are you going to come home? What are you doing here? That, and she's like, I'm just here with my friends. Like, what are you doing here? And he's just like just seething with rage, and then pulled a gun when they were in a fight and put a gun to her head.
Oh, Lord.
And she ran and called the cops. The cops show up, and according to her, it confiscated all of his guns, and there was a whole legal thing. He comes forward, does a reaction to that, a response to that, saying that, yes, the police did come, and yes, I did give my guns, but it was voluntary. I voluntarily handed over my guns. And I never abused her, and I never put a gun to her head, that kind of stuff. So what do you think about that?
Oy. There's some heavy drama in these shows.
Well, also, you grab 30 people.
Right.
Odds are you're going to grab some people like that.
Yeah. I will say, hot topic has been, could this possibly happen in the gay community? This show, could you find 15 people, put them in 2 separate groups? And the answer so far has been a hearty no.
Mm-hmm. What's the question exactly?
We had talked about how this would work in the gay community.
Right.
A really funny take was that people would hook up in the dorms. Even though they said they were both tops, they would find a way to hook up anyways.
Oh, I see. Like 15 tops, 15 bottoms.
Yeah.
I see. And the 15, among the different groups, they would still. Yeah. Well, what I was proposing was 16 people, and they don't have contact outside of the pods.
Right. Yeah. But I will say that this show has like made me think a lot about the assumptions in straight culture and the assumptions in gay culture.
How so?
Just that in straight culture, you can really separate things out. So back to the Kinsey, right? You've got zeros. You've got people who are completely heterosexual. That's why these pods work. What would happen if you had an incidentally homosexual? Okay. This happened?
So season 1, Carlton was his name, presented or as a zero, as a heterosexual man. Then after getting engaged, revealed to his partner that he was bi. Mm. That was a huge conflict. Mm-hmm. And they broke up, and there was a lot of fighting. And it was never established if she was upset about his bisexuality. She did say, and it's viable, that she was upset that he didn't tell her that before they got engaged. That's an important detail to her. Do you agree with that? That he should have said something?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, in the way that I would hope lots of things you would be honest about your desires and your sexuality. The idea that somebody is going to go for the other gender, the idea that like they are a loose cannon because they are bisexual, that's the part that is
wrong and oppressive and weird. Yeah.
That is biphobic.
Yeah. Or that because you've been with men in the past, you're a tainted soul or something.
Right. Yeah.
And
that it's somehow different than the relationship that you would have with her.
Right. And so for her, she was upset, viably so, because he obscured that. But they never went beyond that fight. And then they broke up. So we never knew if she would have also been upset just because of him being bi, or if she would have agreed to be engaged to him if she knew prior.
And one of the Bachelors came out as gay, right?
One of the Bachelors. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't watch that show.
It's so funny because in my world, like these are all the same, and you're like, that one's completely different. No, I don't do that. And I'm like, oh, why is that?
I don't watch many shows. I only watch, really at this point, I only watch Love is Blind. And Bachelor, I've watched it for the reaction video series and found it to not lend itself to that really at all. So you're hooked and you're going to watch season 7.
I'm in it with you. We're buddies.
So season 7 comes out in December.
Okay.
And
I have some time.
I'll
be through my sex therapy certification then. So maybe I'll have some more insights.
Yeah. You can start commenting on Kinsey scales. She's clearly a 3.
She's a 1.
I can tell.
I just, if you could make t-shirts that said incidentally homosexual, I feel like the term incidentally homosexual is so much from the 50s and just, I just love it. I say it all the time to my friends now, just to get them to laugh.
Of the cast members, who do you think?
Who is incidentally homosexual? I can't.
Any gaydar going on?
Any gaydar going on. I mean, I've said I would date Laura. Laura would be a great lesbian. She would fit in. Like, that is lesbian culture. Like, Laura is a classic lesbian femme. Like,
I mean,
blunt.
The bean dip thing could be some sort of passive attempt at meeting some of that physical attraction need.
Well, let's look for more incidental homosexuality together.
Let's do it. We'll go to the park.
I'm excited for this new journey for us.
Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself. Why should people take care of themselves, Rebecca?
I don't know when this episode is coming out, but with Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up, those can be hard days for people. So just know that if that day isn't perfect and wonderful for you, you're not alone, and these are made-up holidays, and take care of yourself, because a lot of us have messed up family relationships.